are weak and frail without you. When in many traditions we will participate in a time when ashes will be placed on our head and we will be reminded that we are sinners and without you there is no salvation. God, remind us that that is the greatest love. Love that demands nothing in return, but is just given completely and purely. Lord, make us in the coming days think more about that as we walk through Lent with you and with others. And Lord, on this day, we thank you that it's Valentine's Day. We thank you that we get to celebrate love. And at a time when there's a lot of hurt and pain and anger and hate, we are thankful that there is a time when we can focus on what is good and what is loving. Lord, be with us today. Help us to hear your words and the words of your servants. Help us to see your love as it's lived out in their lives. And may we all be inspired to walk closer to you and to closer with each other. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
In Proverbs it says, "Many are the plans in a person's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails." Our faithful God will use our stories to share his love and to build his kingdom. Then our story becomes his story. This is our hope. This is our witness. These are our soul stories.
Well, we have a great group of people up here. This represents a variety of, or a varied number of years that people have been married. So you'll get to hear from some people who've been married a long time, and from some people that have just been married a short time, and a lot of different experiences. So we're excited about this. Well, let's start by letting everyone introduce themselves. I think some of you know a lot of people on the stage, but we just want to make sure that that everybody has a chance to know who all these people are. So we'll start down there with Mildred and with Roy. So y'all can introduce yourselves.
Good morning. I am Mildred Williams, and I am an associate professor of psychology here at Southern Wesleyan, and I don't know what else to say. I've been here 10 years, and this gorgeous, good-looking man, I'm going to let him introduce himself. I'm just saying.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm Roy Williams, the husband of Mildred, and it's ironic that I have to say that because while I was pastoring for 11 years in Clemson, they always remember her as the pastor's wife. But now, since I'm not pastoring, I guess I'm the husband of Mildred. But I am a hospice chaplain now. I've been a hospice chaplain for 8 years, and we've been married. It'll be 25 years in September that I had to put up with her.
You said 25. Keep up with them. Add them up for me.
Hi, I'm Professor Heather Haithcock. I teach voice here, and I also teach music and art appreciation, as well as direct the spring musical. Side plug, March 15th through 17th, Beauty and the Beast will be in this room. It's going to be awesome. This is my husband. I'll let him introduce.
I'm Paul Haithcock. Yeah, thank you. Heather got some screams, so I wouldn't mind. I guess known here primarily as Heather's husband, and yeah, the executive pastor over at Alive Wesleyan Church, and it feels like we've been married forever, but 10 years, yeah.
My name is Nathan Thompson. I'm the head men's and women's tennis coach.
Let's give Nate a big hand. He's brand new. Let's give him a big hand to welcome him.
I don't know if this is my wife. I'll let her speak for herself.
Hi, I'm Jess. I've taught school, middle school and high school for a few years, but since we moved back, right now I'm just focusing on being this wonderful man's wife.
How long have you been married?
We've been married, this July, we'll be married for 5 years.
I'm Jane Dill, Chair of the Fine Arts Division, and happy to be here today. And Ken and I have been married this summer. It will be 37 years.
Very good. My name's George Stone. I sell bowling balls. Yeah. You know me as the chaplain, and the Williams were on the panel last year. We did this. This is one of the chapels that got a lot of positive response by students. A lot of people said, can you do it again the very next chapel? They wanted it to keep going. It wasn't possible to do that. So we decided that we would crank it back up this time. And so we invited the Williams to be back as a part of that, and then to bring up 2 other couples to be with us as well. So, some of us will answer all the questions. Some questions I will just ask, and just let them answer as they want to, and so that's good. So, did you count? Did you add up all the years?
Yeah, 77.
77 years of marriage represented up here. I think that's pretty significant. One time, Jane and I were at a Chipotle, and we were ordering, and we were joking. I said, all right, you got to pay. And she said, no, you're going to pay. And I said, no, I can't pay. You got. And we were just, having fun with it. And then the woman who was checking us out said, are y'all married? And we said yes, and to each other. And and she said, how long? And I think at that time it was 35 years or something like that. And we said, 35 years. And she said, are you serious? And I said, yes. She said, I've never met anybody that's been married 35 years. That's really a significant thing. So we want you to have long and healthy and good marriages. So, okay, so since you've heard from the Williams and you've heard from me before about some of this, I just want to ask the 2 middle questions, 2 middle groups right now. So tell us, how did y'all meet?
Okay. I've known my wife for 15 years, and we met at Clemson. We both went to Clemson. We actually stayed in the same dorm together. It was a co-ed dorm, and we just kind of knew mutual friends. And I don't know, kind of funny story is we always joke that our first date was at McDonald's. And that's how we met. It's not really romantic, but we just mutual friends, and we fell in love, and we dated for a while, and it's been a blessing these last 5 years of marriage. So that's our.
All right, we're gonna tell kind of 2 quick instances, because the first time we met was just in passing. I was at a Wesleyan Youth Conference, C3. Most of you would not be old enough to remember even what these are like, but it was a youth gathering, and a couple thousand students were there. I was working security as a college student, making sure that everyone was in by curfew, and ran across a couple of giddy high school girls in the hallway after curfew one night, and instead of telling them to go in their rooms like I was supposed to, I sat down and got to know them, and one of them happened to be Heather. And so that was the first time we kind of met in passing, and then...
So after we met at C3, I told my best friend, after they made us go back to our hotel room because we were breaking curfew, I apparently told her that I was going to marry that brown-eyed Paul from SWU. And so I was a little bit infatuated with this dude, even though he didn't remember me. But so the next summer, yeah, no, thanks. The next summer, it was my senior year. I was coming into Southern Wesleyan as a freshman, and we had youth camp. I loved youth camp, so I pulled up to camp that summer. And lo and behold, there was a SWU ministry team there, The Difference, that is still traveling in the summers now. And Brown-Eyed Paul was on that ministry team, and I was like, oh my word, it's Brown-Eyed Paul! I should have learned his last name at that point, but I was so excited until I realized he was dating someone on the team, and she ended up being my camp counselor that whole week. And so every night I had to hear about how awesome Paul was and how that they couldn't hold hands or anything at camp, but like during the weekends when they would travel, they could sit on the same row in the van and hold hands.
That's probably enough.
Which leads me to say, you want to be a part of summer ministry teams. Sign up now, travel, see the world, find a mate. It's all good. All right, so all couples, answer this question for me. How long did you date before you got married?
Okay. We actually had this conversation yesterday, and we had a controversy about how long we dated. I said, okay, we met. Oh, look at Cool Modine. Oh. Ooh, he was hot back then. He's still hot, baby. He's still hot. but your hair was black too. But we met in June of 1992. And 6 months later, he was giving me an engagement ring. I'm just saying.
She put something in a pound cake, just let me tell you that. She put something in a pound cake.
It's hard for me.
I knew he was going to say that. My poor children are so embarrassed right now. But then it took us 9 months to plan our wedding, and we got married September of '93.
Let's see. So I guess the dating thing, like here at Christian University, is a little confusing, right? Do you guys still talk? Is that a thing? Date, talk? I don't know. I feel like we talked for like 7 months until you asked me out, right?
I had to double check because he wasn't very clear when he asked me out, and so I said, okay, just so we're clear, you just asked me to be your girlfriend, right? And so now he says that I asked him out, which I guess technically I did. But girl knows what a girl wants, so we talked for 7 months because someone was slow, and then we dated for a year and a half, and then were engaged for a year, and then we got married in May 31st, 2008.
So our story is probably a little bit different than these. And speaking of slow, I was actually very slow because we first met in 2003, and I think instantly there was a connection, and we started talking and dating, and we didn't get married until 2013. So it's about 10 years.
I feel great about myself now.
But that was probably mostly my fault. I think I wasn't ready to, I guess, settle down. Jess is a lot smarter than I am. She had her heart set, I think, a little bit earlier than I did. But yeah, I guess we've been dating for 10 years before we got married. Wow.
I think we dated about 2.5 years before we got married.
2.5 years.
Yes.
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 That's correct.
One of the things you notice from this is, there's your goals right there. One of the things you notice about this is that dating and all of this is oftentimes messy. Are we on a date or not on a date? Are we going out as friends? Is he asking me out? Is she saying let's go out? That kind of thing. And part of navigating all of that, just as a piece of advice, is to just be upfront with each other. I think it's so great to be upfront with your intentions. I will tell you that I think it was maybe the third time that we had dated. My parents at that time were living in Macon, Georgia, working at Hephzibah Children's Home. And we got back from our date, and I threw some clothes in the car, drove through the night. Wasn't a very long trip, 3 hours or something, 3.5 hours. Got home, scared my parents when I came in that late. They weren't expecting me, and the next morning I said, I want to marry this woman. So I think I knew early on, like you, that this is what I wanted, but would have to work on that a little bit more. So just quickly answer this question for me. Where did you get married, and did you get married in a church? Okay, let's answer that question. So I'll tell you, Jane and I got married. We got married in church. We got married in Anderson, South Carolina at Boulevard Baptist Church. Jane was the organist there, and so she'd been there for 4 years, so that was sort of like her home church. And Dr. Fouts, who was a professor here of religion, did our premarital counseling, our ceremony. So Jane was United Methodist. I was Wesleyan. We got married in a Baptist church. We were trying to cover all our bases with that. So.
My wife and I, we got married at Long Branch Baptist Church in Greenville, South Carolina. And Dr. Lorenzo Lynch was our pastor. And I didn't date her long, probably about 13 months. But I think at our wedding, I had to wait an hour before she showed up. And I think the Lord was trying to give me a way out, but I just had to stay there. That's the truth.
So Paul and I got married. We're both from North Carolina, the High Point, Asheboro area. So we got married at Central United Methodist Church in Asheboro, mainly because that was where my grandparents had got married, where my parents were married, and so I wanted to keep the tradition going. But also, an extra plus was that they had a real pipe organ, and I wanted Miss Still to play in my wedding and to play the organ, so that was what we did. So.
Jess and I, we got married in Newport, Rhode Island, and she's from Massachusetts, so it's really close to where she lives. And I used to play a tournament up there in Newport, Rhode Island, and it was always a tennis tournament. I used to play professionally, but it was always a special place. I felt like I had a good connection, and Jess would always come watch. And a few days before we got married, it was a really tough time for her family. Her grandfather had passed away, and I'll let you tell it. I think you can tell it a little better than I can.
Well, my grandfather, he passed away. It was probably less than 48 hours before we got married, so it definitely was challenging. And growing up as a little girl, my father, I grew up in a family of commercial fishermen, and my father was a commercial fisherman, and when I was 2, he was lost at sea, and so the ocean for me was always a beautiful, special place, and I feel like God has always just blessed me with that, and it's always comforted me with the ocean, even though it's brought so much tragedy in my life. And so we got married right there by the ocean in Newport, Rhode Island. And as Nate was saying, right before my grandfather passed that morning, it was kind of wild. I guess you don't really picture your wedding morning as you're getting ready, planning a funeral, but that's kind of how it looked for us. But God really blessed us through that, and he showed us his love and our strength, and it was the most beautiful day that we could have ever imagined. And I remember praying that morning, and I was telling my mom, I was like, he's gonna show up. I mean, obviously we know he's gonna show up, it's our wedding, but he's gonna show up in a way that, none of us can even imagine. And I said to my mom, I really think that God's gonna just give us a rainbow this day. And 5 minutes before we got married, a rainbow, there was no rain, not a cloud in the sky, and there was a beautiful rainbow that appeared in the sky.
So Jess was crying. I thought she was crying emotionally because we got married, but it was a different reason.
That's a great story of redemption and redeeming all those thoughts and memories. What a great thing. I'm going to put my cell phone number up on the screen. If you want to ask some questions of the panel, you can text me, and I can see them, and then I'll censor them, and maybe your question will get asked. So if you want to do that, you can do that. Feel free to do that. Now, let me give you a word of caution. You're texting my cell phone, okay? And did this one time before and got a lot of response. About 3 weeks later, I got included on somebody's group text about some kind of party and read Solo Cup and something, and anyway, it led to a big conversation that I had to have with a student. So just be careful. Just reminding you, you're texting my phone, so just be aware. Just be aware. So, children. Do you have children? If so, how many?
Well, we can start. We have 22-year-old twins. Kira, raise your hand, Kira. So she can be embarrassed. Khalil, are you in here, sweetheart? He's in the back, being cute. So we have 22-year-old twins, and they are the love of our life. I cannot imagine my life without you. I love you, man. Love you.
Paul and I have 2 kids. We have Jackson, who is 5, and Bennett, a little girl. She is 2, and they are really cute. And you will see us often in, oh, there they are. I just want to squeeze them. We eat in the calf often, so they love you college students. So you just love on them all you want. They think y'all are the coolest things in the whole wide world.
We currently do not have any children. We do have a cat that is treated like a child. So I inherited that cat through marriage.
We have 2 children, Emily, who is children's pastor in Kernersville, North Carolina, and she has a stepson who's 17, and then she has 2 other children. So we have 3 grandchildren, and a little boy, Emerson, who's 3, and a little girl, Everly, who is 4 months. And then we have Palmer, who a lot of you know and you see over in the post office, who is also one of the coaches for the men's soccer team. So we have 2 great children who grew up really on this campus, and again, kind of like Paul and Heather's kids, grew up seeing people like you become their heroes. And I can't tell you how important you are to children who grow up on this campus, who see you and want to be like you. And I'm so grateful that they had that opportunity and how this place molded and shaped them to become the young adults that they are.
All right, now let's get to some of the questions that students are sending in. So Wow. Okay. Um, what is different about marriage now that you're married than you thought about marriage before you were married? That's what somebody want to answer that?
Well, I answer it. What I think is different about marriage than what I thought marriage would be is a lot of sacrificing. I was by myself for so long, independent. But then when I got married, I realized that it was no longer about me. And it took a long time to adjust, especially when you know how it is when you're an athlete and you're independent, and all this, and you basically can have what you want. But when I met Mildred, it was a challenge. And I don't know if that was good or not, but it was a challenge. But what I've learned more than anything else is that we both came in with baggage, and we had to learn not to let my baggage dictate anything or her baggage. And so in essence, what happened as we begin to grow, we've learned that we don't compete against each other, we complete each other. And that's the biggest thing, because I'm not where I need to be all the time. And when I'm not where I need to be, she kicks in. And when she's not where she needs to be, I kick in. So we become friends. And just, what was it? Today is Wednesday. Monday night, I think it was Monday night, she had me up all night long because her big toe was hurting. And I'm like, for real? And she just kept on, I'm sorry. I said, yeah, but I can't go to sleep. But anyway, that's just what makes it happen. We go through everything together. We have ups and downs, and what we go through, but it's nothing that we've gone through that the Lord hadn't brought us out of, because he's always the glue that brings us together.
Good. Anybody else?
I think one of the things I would say would probably echo what Roy said about learning about sacrifice, but second thing would be, I think I didn't underestimated how much I would value a life companion, somebody who's always there. You get to experience all the ups and downs with, and kind of the whole journey. Undervalued, probably before we were married, how important that would be to make it through life, and probably how much it would teach me about my relationship with God regarding grace, how much grace God extends to me, and in turn, how much grace I get to extend to Heather, or vice versa, probably more so. And even just what unconditional love looks like. So those, I would say, would be some things that I learned. Yeah.
And I'll echo on the same thing. I think sacrifice and unconditional love. I think learning to love my wife unconditionally is something that I'm fighting for every day. And kind of what Paul was saying is that I've learned I can't do that without Christ, and really getting to a point where, and I know you're sitting right here, but you complete me in the sense that you challenge me, you encourage me, you love me, and I know at times that can be hard, and I think that's the difference, is just being able to soften my heart, to be able to be better for you.
I think one of the things for me was I came into marriage with a very cultural view of marriage, and not what I would consider to be a very scriptural view of marriage. And I thought that meant that someone had to be in charge, someone had to be head, someone had to be the person. And we were both very independent people coming into our marriage. And over the years, God softened my heart for us to decide that we wanted Christ to be the head of our marriage, and not either one of us, that neither one of us are good enough or smart enough to be the head of our marriage or the head of our home, and that we wanted it to be Christ, and that we would make our decisions together. There's times that we defer to each other because of expertise that each have. I'm not good with numbers and money. It would be a disaster for me to try to take care of all of that. Jane's not very good with cooking. It would not be a disaster, but it just wouldn't be good, and so I cook. And Jane plays the piano, and I'm not being mean. We're just being honest that there are roles that you find in marriage. There are a lot of questions about arguments. So, any of you want to talk about if you have an argument, how you handle an argument?
Well, arguments. Well, for me, it's real hard for me to have arguments with my wife because, as some of you know, she never raises her voice. She's always calm, but there have been times where she raised her voice, and it's almost like I do a double take. And I never forget one time, we had an argument, and really it was me. I was having a bad day. It wasn't anything going right, and I come home, and, she's at the kitchen, at the sink, and I just started going off. What you been doing all day? The house, I just complaining. She's still cooking dinner and everything. And I just kept on, you don't hear me talking to you, why don't you answer to me? She just kept on making dinner. Then she says, would you sit down at the table? I'm like, sit down at the table for what? Y'all know how it is. So anyway, we sat down. I'm still just going off. And she brought my plate before me, had fixed dinner, and she looked at me with that calm voice, and this is what she said. This is not my stuff. I'm not co-signing it with you. I'm like, what? She said, well, she fixed the steak dinner too now. She said, this is not my stuff that you're bringing in here, and I'm not co-signing it with you. I did like this. Bzzz. And then the last thing happened was, I still was arguing. I said, well, let me tell you something. If you ever in your life think about leaving me, you know what I'm going to do? I'm being macho. And she's like, what you going to do? I said, I'm going to pack my bags and follow you because you ain't going nowhere. And that's how we've been handling arguments.
Arguments in our household are a little tricky because I am not calm. If you see my hair, that should give you a little hint as to that I can sometimes be a little bit fiery. Sorry, musical people. But he deals with it really well, and he has learned over 10 years how to keep me calm or what he shouldn't do, because then I'll just get more upset. But what I have to work on personally and have continued to work on is that I have to, in argument situations, choose the best of my husband, not think the worst, and think that he's doing wrong. I have to choose the best in the situation so that I can look at it differently than just what's wrong with me, but choose what's better or choose good out of him, not always go to the bad.
I'll just say one thing. One thing that I've learned that I think is practical that anybody can take into an argument and a future argument with a spouse is never use the line, "You sound crazy." That's probably my number one takeaway from arguing. Is that good, Miss Psychology Professor? Yeah, is it?
Yes, dear. Yes,
Yeah.
dear.
So, Jess and I, we've been married for 5 years, and I've definitely learned a lot about arguments over the last 5 years. If I win an argument, I lose. So I've kind of gotten to the place where I've tried to just be the peacemaker and just let kind of those things subside, and we eventually will come back together, and everything is okay once the storm is gone. But
I'm definitely a little fiery one too.
I think that it's interesting that we were placed in each other's lives because, Ken, what you were saying about she's good at things that you aren't good at, and I really do feel like I'm good at a lot of things that are challenging for you, but vice versa. You're very good at things that I have no interest in doing or being good at. So, but when we do kind of have disagreements, I'm more of the peaceful one and try to be quiet, and I think that kind of drives you crazy. So
I want to talk about it. Tell me what are you thinking? But I feel like I've learned too that it's really important for me to kind of like what you're saying, just to step away sometimes. I just need to kind of step away before I say something I may regret and trying to dig for some sort of an answer and we've learned that in time, like just kind of cooling out a little bit and then coming back together, we talk about things in a lot better manner and gives ourselves some time to kind of get a little more peace and really pray about what's going on too.
I think for us, learning how to be able just to sit down. I know we used to teach a course here called Marriage and Family, and in that course we talked about communication, and a lot of it for us was learning how we each communicated and when was the best time. If there was something that I learned that when Ken is driving, that's a great time to talk to him about certain things. And we learned how to have peace talks where we just sit down and we don't accuse, but you say things like, when you did this, it made me feel this way. And to learn not to say things like, well, you just never. And if you would just, And so some of that you just have to learn as you go along. But learning about communication was really a key for us in figuring out the best way to communicate through difficult times. And that really helped us a lot.
Not early in our marriage, later in our marriage, we've come to learn that our desire is to, what we say is to, we want to fight for unity, not for victory. So we don't want to fight to win. We want to fight that we can be united in whatever it is that has come up and created a problem. All right, we're getting close to the end here, so I'm just going to ask this and try to make this a little bit brief if you can. A piece of advice that you would give to these people about marriage that you've learned from your experience.
I think the glue to keeping marriages together, one of the things that Roy and I do religiously is we have morning prayer as a couple. We pray over our household, our children, families, you guys. So being unified in prayer, I think, is the glue to keeping things together.
So for those of you who don't have the significant other yet, I would say to be patient, that God will send you that person when it's the right time. But be patient with that. And then one thing that I would say is that we try very hard to always choose each other. So putting each other first, whether that's in creating a date night every so often, every other week or something like that, to where it's special for us. You have to work at that as you get busier schedules and busier lives and have kids. Anybody want to be a babysitter? No, just kidding. But as you have situations in your life get more hectic, you still have to choose each other and put God first, but then put each other second and first in your lives.
And I would say the same thing as far as patience. You know, we met each other in 2003, and we didn't get married until 2013. And I do think that the Lord kind of wasn't putting us together because we weren't ready. But when we did get married, I think it was the right time for both of us to come together and love each other. But also, you know, keeping the Lord at the front of our marriage, and making sure we're loving the Lord first, and that helps us love each other. And that's my advice for you guys.
I think just continue to for all of us, just to be the best person that God would have you to be. Whatever relationship or situation you're in, to concentrate on that, and then I think the other things fall into place, and your relationship with all of us are around each other, that's very crucial, marriage or any relationship.
Every relationship's going to have seasons. There are going to be times when it's easy and times when it's difficult. It's always that way. And if you're committed, it will pull you through those times. And putting each other first, praying for each other. We pray every morning before we leave our house. Even when we're rushed. This morning we prayed in the bathroom. Because we're rushing and trying to get stuff done, and we said we got to pray before we go. And so we just stopped right there and we had our prayer time. So committing to do those kinds of things that protect your marriage and set up boundaries for you are important things for you to do. We're at the end. There's great questions. Some of these questions that you sent me are very personal questions. I would be comfortable answering those privately if you want to find me and ask me those questions, and I would be happy to do that. I want to end with Scripture, because God speaks to us about love and about marriage. From these very familiar words from 1 Corinthians that says, love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. It does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it's not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. Always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. Let's pray. Father, I thank you that you love us with this kind of love, and that you allow us to be able to find this love for others. Lord, on this day of Valentine's and also Ash Wednesday, we pray that we would cross our hearts with the ashes of your love, and that we might guard it so carefully, and that we would find great comfort in learning to love and in learning to be loved. We thank you for that. In Christ's name I pray. Amen. Give these people a big hand. Thank them for participating today.